Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, really excited to welcome back Phil Proctor to the program. Phil is one of the founding members of the Firesign Theater, the counterculture sketch comedy group that broke new ground in the 1960s and continued to perform through the early 2000s. There's two surviving members of the Firesign Theater, Phil and David Osmond, and they continue to perform today. Great groundbreaking comedy. Younger listeners might know Phil best as Howard from the Rugrats, 14 years of movies and television combined playing Howard on the Rugrats. He's the drunken circus monkey in Eddie Murphy's Dr. Dolittle. He played King Gerard on the Smurfs. He's had this incredible show business life, and he talks about it in great stories collected in his autobiography, Where's My Fortune Cookie? We had Phil on last year to talk about the book, but we're bringing him back because he is starting a brand new podcast. The Proctor Podcast is underway, and it's Phil's storytelling about his incredible show business career, great encounters with celebrities, funny things that happened on the various jobs that he's had. He's really had an incredible life. I mean, he really was living that 1960s experience, and we get into that a bit in a couple of the stories that he shares with us on today's Word Balloon. He also talks about very fun encounters with greats like Phil Hartman and Harry Anderson, and just an incredible amount of stories, as you'll hear in this conversation. Really happy to welcome Phil Proctor. Today's Word Balloon is brought to you by the people behind Terrificon, coming to Mohegan Sun this August.
In a world where fans have grown tired of the same old cookie-cutter Comic-Con formats, only one con defies the odds. Only one Comic-Con stands what fans really want. Only one Comic-Con dares calls itself Terrific. That's right, this August 17th through the 19th at the all-new giant-sized Mohegan Sun Expo Center in Uncasville, Connecticut, comes Terrificon. Connecticut's Terrific Comic-Con is back with New England's largest gathering of comic book artists and writers. Plus, Terrificon delivers actors from your favorite TV shows and movies. And there's an all-new expanded gaming section as we give you tabletop gaming, video games, and so much more. Plus, don't forget, all kids 10 and under get in free at Terrificon and can be part of the all-new All Yeah Kids Comic-Con. Join us for 3 full days of Comic-Con action only in Connecticut at Terrificon. For more information, go to our website, www.terrificon.com.
Really excited to be part of Terrificon. Can't wait to see you there at Mohegan Sun this August. I'll be moderating a few panels and doing what I can to book some of the incredible guests that are going to be there. So looking forward to seeing you in August at Mohegan Sun at Terrificon. All right, let's get into our conversation now with Phil Proctor. Really excited to have him back. The Proctor Podcast can be found at theproctorpodcast.podbean.com. The first episode is up. A new episode will be launched each week, and you are in for a treat because, as you'll hear right now, Phil is a really great storyteller and has a lot of amazing encounters that he's had in his many decades of his comedy career. So now let's welcome back Phil Proctor to Word Balloon. Always happy to welcome Phil Proctor back. I'm thrilled that I can say that. You're a returning guest, Phil. Welcome back to Word Balloon.
It's very nice to be returning, you know, and I don't mean in another body or another incarnation.
That'd be fun, though.
I'm having fun in this one still.
I'm so excited for your new podcast. Give us the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch. Wait a minute. What kind of show is this? Hey, man. All right. So anyway, yes, I wrote a book called Where's My Fortune Cookie, which was co-authored with Brad Schreiber, a silly friend of mine. Okay. And it's basically my memoirs, as long as I can still remember things. Okay. And it's partly a story of Firesign Theater, but mainly the story of me and how I kind of found my way through life so far using a combination of a dumb chance and psychic abilities, okay, which God has either blessed or cursed me with. I'm not quite sure. And about 3 months ago, I got a call from Sue Zizza and her husband, David Shin, and they said, we want to make a podcast. We want to make an audiobook and a podcast of your story. And I said, well, that's just great, because I've been looking for some kind of a company to do a book on tape, or whatever they call them these days, an audio book. Sure. And I discovered that basically all that they will do is hire you to read your book. And see, I don't want to do that. I wanted to do something more adventurous. I wanted to add sound effects, maybe some drop-ins from the records I've made, music, and various other things. And I also wanted to improve the book because there were some factual errors in it that I wanted to fix, okay? So Sue was absolutely delighted to hear this, and they got completely behind it. And so I flew out, and I sat in their cute little studio down in Brooklyn and recorded the book over a period of like 2.5, 3 days. And I haven't even heard it yet because their master plan is to release it as a podcast on Friday, June the 6th, I think it is.
Okay.
Okay. And it'll be like 24 episodes. And I think you'll be able to access it. You have to pay something for it. I don't know what. Put money in the bottle and throw it in the ocean. I don't know how they're going to do that. But in any event, it will be a very interesting audio tour of my life. You know, I'm very happy with the way that it came out, even though I haven't heard it.
They're doing a lot in post-production, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I have faith in their post-production abilities, and I know that they totally agreed with my approach to the project. So I'm going to hear it for the first time with the people who have come to celebrate my life so far in Kansas City at the Here Now Festival in the afternoon. I think it's from like noon to 1:45. They're celebrating me, whatever that means.
Cool.
You know, I did see that there's a stake and some wood and rope, but I don't think that's for me exactly. I don't know, some other kind of special effect. But in any event, that's where I'll be, and surrounded by friends and fans and family, and it's really going to be a lot of fun to listen to it. And then it will be released as an audiobook, which please no end.
Yeah, man, that's great. And I was curious if, given your background and everything and your facility for audio sketch comedy and stuff, if you'd have other actors, will that be part of it, or is it a first person narrative with music and sound effects in the
Yeah, it's my story. I may be doing some voices on it, of course. Yes, possible. But no, it's my story. You know, however, a fellow named Tom Kelly, who has a comic following online, and a podcast of his own, we hired him to do ins and outs. Okay,
sure.
So there's like a wraparound, an introduction to each one of the episodes, so you'll know where you are in the story, and that we hope that'll attract a younger audience to this event as well, to this audio event, this oral event.
Well, like I said, I think you're a natural to dive into podcasting again because of your background. I've been curious and have been thinking about doing a first-person narrative sort of podcast. Have you listened to, like, do you know about You Must Remember This, the Katrina Longworth Golden Age of Hollywood podcast? You know, she's solo for the most part. Occasionally we'll have somebody quote a famous person and throw some voices in. But have you listened to first-person podcasts, and which ones, if you have?
No, I can't say I have. I've listened to some of my friends, like Terry McGovern. He does it with his brother Timbo, where they talk about certain years. They'll pick a year, like 1967 or something, and rhapsodize on it. And I may actually do one of those with him in the not-too-distant future. And I've done a lot of podcasts for people. You know, I did Phil Hendry's podcast.
Oh, that's great.
You can imagine how much fun that was.
I bet. Oh, my God.
I've loved and admired that crazy man for many years, and he was actually sitting up here in my house recording it, and we just had a wonderful time, and kind of continued this on and off friendship that we've had over all these years. So yes, I am acquainted with a lot of these podcasts, but the intention of this particular thing is basically to promote the book, because the one thing that the podcast can't have are all the pictures that are in the book. Okay.
Good point. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the fact is that since I've done so many voices over my career, thousands and thousands of voices, I was Howard on the Rugrats for 14 years. I'm the father of Phil and Lil, and that still is one of the most amazing, that's still one of the most amazing, like, flashpoints, if I mention it, because everybody grew up watching the Rugrats or watching their kids watching the Rugrats. Sure. You know, and then I'm also the drunken French monkey in the Dr. Dolittle movies. I'm a social drinker. You know, lots of people know that part. And then I did a whole bunch of voices for characters in the Disney Pixar movies during their heyday in the early days. So, you know, my career in Firesign Theater is one thing, but my career in the voiceover industry is 1,000 things.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely, man. No, and I have enjoyed your work absolutely on animation, and they were kind enough to give me Battlefield Earth, the audio thing.
Okay.
It is such a magnum opus. I haven't been able to sit down and listen to the 48 hours of it. You know,
I think you ought to pop a Magnum while you're listening to it. You know, yeah. Working on the golden age of Pulp Fiction books was really a treat for me. That was like a 3 or 4 year project that I got involved in, adding voices and lots of dialect voices and things, Germans and all kinds of fantasy creatures. It was really fun. But I've also over the years done all kinds of other audio presentations of various sorts, and really the major part of my work for 3 decades while I was doing Firesign Theater and pursuing on-camera appearances in television shows and things like that was to add voices to movies and to background voices, I should say, to movies and television shows. So you've heard me many more times than you could possibly imagine, revoicing characters in movies and adding, speaking in foreign languages. It's just amazing the kind of stuff that I got to do. I remember one of the first ADR jobs, they call it, additional dumb replies. No, the automated dialogue replacement. Okay,
yep.
Looping and dubbing, and it's quite an industry. And I did it for a long time. And one of the first projects I worked on was, oh gosh, now I can't remember the name of the movie. The one where, hold on, Dawn. No, it's the one about the Russian submarine. What was it called?
Hunt for Red October? Or
Yes, Hunt for Red. It was the Hunt for my memory at that time. Yes, the Hunt for Red October. That was one of the first ones that I did because I speak Russian. Я по-русски говорю свободно, понимаете? Летом что был в Советском Союзе. I was in the Soviet Union with the Yale Russian Chorus in 1959.
That doesn't sound like a real thing, Phil.
Yeah, I speak Russian. Je parle français couramment. I speak French. I speak Spanish. I speak Italian. I speak Norwegian. Also, I speak many languages. I was born with this gift, and I've loved it all my life. I was born with the gift to hear music and repeat it. And the first time that my family realized this, my grandfather back in Goshen, Indiana, was singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers" to me or something to indoctrinate me before I fell asleep, and I hummed it back to him. And so he brought me downstairs, and I actually repeated it for the family. And John, that's the last time I ever worked for free. But anyway, I'm doing the Hunt for Red October with all of these expatriate Russians who have escaped from Russia, mainly Jews, because they're being oppressed.
Sure.
And we were forced to sing the Russian national anthem, the Soviet national anthem.
It's a great scene in the movie. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, a great scene, and of course Sean Connery, speaking. He's Sean Connery, talks with his better and everything. So I said to the ADR director, I said, "Now, when is Mr. Connery going to come in and overdub his lines with a Russian accent?" He said, "Oh no, it's Sean Connery." I said, "Yeah, I know it's Sean Connery." No, he we explain it when we zoom in on him. He's speaking Russian. Then we zoom out and he's speaking, English. And I said, well, he's speaking, English with a Scottish accent. He said, oh, well, we explained that. We say he's Latvian. I said,
of course.
It's that Latvian brr. That old Latvian brr.
So did you loop him? Like what? Like were you speaking his Russian?
No. He just did his thing.
Yeah.
He just did his thing, but we looped various other characters in that, and
okay.
And again, it's a fascinating business, looping and dubbing. Putting in lines in the background that you may not actually hear. You can't be too interesting, when you're right. You're doing lines, but what most people don't understand is that when you shoot a movie or a television show, and you have extras in the background, the extras are not really talking. Right? They can't, because if they talk, then when you cut the film from one scene to another, you'd have a distraction in the background. You have to cut to the major dialogue, right? Sure. So after the film is made, or the television show or movie for TV is made, then a group of crazy actors like me, who basically have background in improvisation and speak languages and can do dialects of different kinds, they bring us in, and we spend a day or two adding all these voices, sometimes a week, in these big movies. I did the Die Hard movies, and they spent weeks putting words into every character's mouth in these huge scenes in like airports and things. There'd be a man walking across the screen from the right to the left, and just his head would be visible, but he'd be talking or be pretending to be talking, and you have to put words into his mouth. Like, so what gate are we supposed to go to, dear? Something like that. Sure. And all improvised. And then when it's mixed together, it creates a mood. It helps to create the mood of the movie,
Absolutely, man. No, exactly. There's always that din of, like you said, background conversations. It can't supersede, the dialogue, obviously.
That's right.
So, that's interesting that it is that intricate. I always, as a radio guy and having to make commercials and things, they have those kind of pre-programmed kind of, all right, here's the exterior of a shopping mall. And
exactly.
Have you done it for any like sound effect companies? Have you done those kind of jobs as well?
No, but we did. So that's really putting me back in time. When I was a kid in New York, my dad was an entrepreneur. He's a lawyer, but he was an entrepreneur, and he used to bring in new inventions to the house, like the Polaroid camera.
Okay. Yes, which was a huge deal for, I mean, today's, my listeners, probably half of them, I'm guessing, have heard the word Polaroid, but don't understand the marvel that it was when it came through. The 50s, right? When it came through?
It was in the 50s, exactly. And he also brought in the latest iteration of tape recorders. Okay.
Yes.
And so little Phil, I just jumped on it, and I began, like, I would record Ernie Kovacs off of the television.
Sure.
Okay. And then write down the dialogue of some of his skits and things and perform them. I recorded Bob and Ray every day when they're in their live show.
Absolutely.
And learned how to edit, because I wanted to save their funniest bits. Okay. So, and which, by the way, ended up on a record, The Best of Bob and Ray, that Larry Josephson put together. But in fact, I was experimenting all the time with, radio and audio effects myself in my own home. Okay.
Yep.
But, and in keeping with this, I wanted to play with some sound effects records. Okay.
Sure.
So I went into the phone book, and I found a place called Major Sound Effects, a guy named Valentino. Okay. And he had his company on like the 17th floor of a big building that your daddy works in, down in the music row, like the Lower West Side. And I went up there, and these were all 78s, 78 records, not 33 and a third. They were, not vinyl. And I went through the catalog, and I picked out, I would save my allowance up and buy records, and then I would improvise to them and make funny tape recordings.
Sure.
We all have to start somewhere, right?
Phil, honestly, again, because of listening to your guys' comedy albums, and even luckily enough that old time radio in the 70s, my formative years, was still being played, I was fascinated by that, and I really wanted to be on radio. And as you know, too, beyond performance radio, whether music or comedy or whatever, news and information, we take the internet for granted, but it was really those 24-hour news stations that fascinated me as a kid. I was talking about with one of my coworkers and saying, as radio is, I think, in a shifting mode as it was in the 50s, it's happening now. I'm like, you got to understand, when I was growing up, this was the internet. Radio was the internet. Live information and listening literally to even, a news reporter doing something at 2:00 in the morning as a little kid. I'm like, oh my God, look at that, man. They're the watchers. They're the ones that are kind of, keeping things going when everything else is shut down. And we got the test pattern. It's on the TV and everything.
Man. That's right. It was live. Radio continued. And of course, I'm old enough to remember hearing the end of the Second World War announced on the radio in Goshen, Indiana. And all of the adults suddenly started whooping and crying and hugging one another and drinking and dancing and smoking. And I said, what is it? And they just announced the end of the Second World War. Wow. I was like 5 years old at the time,
Sure.
So radio was a great part of our lives growing up in the late 40s and early 50s. And we literally, families would sit around the big old radio receiver and listen to live comedy programs like Fanny Brice and Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy,
sure.
and Fred Allen, Bob Hope, my God. And then the Firesign Theater, when we recorded our first records, we recorded them at the Columbia Studios in Hollywood. And the studios that we recorded our first albums in were radio studios.
That's great.
Isn't that great?
Yes, it is, man. Yeah, no, and literally the studios that Jack Benny and the other, I'm assuming Columbia, these were the CBS studios. That's
right, the CBS studios, exactly. And then also, when the Firesign Theater did its PBS special, it's PBS special called Weirdly Cool, we filmed it on the Jack Benny television, in the Jack Benny television studios.
Wow.
So again, it was like, this wonderful kind of homage to all of the people who had influenced us. And then we were able to actually, be in a magic place and do that kind of stuff. Now, if people are interested in Firesign Theater archives, records, books, whatever, you can go to firesigntheater.com. Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in my stuff, you can go to planetproctor.com. Okay, because I've been writing a blog for 25, 30 years now, and they're archived at planetproctor.com. And there's links to get my book, Where's My Fortune Cookie, which is available at Amazon. And I highly recommend it. Everybody who has read it, I mean, when you write a book, pardon me, and especially when co-author. When you write a book and especially when you co-author it, you never know what effect it's really going to have on the public. Pretty much like putting a record out there,
Sure.
And so I've been very, very gratified to hear all of the nice responses that people have made in relationship to the book and what they get from it, especially the psychic part of it. The fact that I survived a Chinese gangland shooting where 5 were killed and 11 wounded. I've had a pretty exciting life. and it's not over yet.
Absolutely, man. No, and that's why it was such a thrill to talk to you the first time. The book is fantastic, and it absolutely lends itself to audio storytelling. And that's the great thing, man. Every chapter is its own kind of story, so it makes a lot of sense that you're doing this. And when Jeff Abram told me that, hey, you want to have Phil back on? He wants to promote his podcast. I'm like, absolutely, because you're a born storyteller, and your career reflects that. The book certainly reflects that. And yeah, man, beyond the shooting in Chinatown, there was also, my favorite thing that you told me was you and Brandon DeWolf from Shane and
Brandon DeWild. Yeah,
thank you, DeWild. Is that how you said?
Yeah, Brandon DeWilde.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, your guys' adventures in the 60s at some protests and things like that.
Yeah, we happen to be. And again, I mean, it's so I've known so many people in my life, really from starting as a child, because my dad and mom were involved in show business, and I met all these wonderful people. Henry Morgan, great radio star.
Wow, absolutely, another like Bob and Ray kind of off-the-wall comedy. I love Henry Morgan's radio show.
Very cynical, funny guy who got up with murder on the radio. And it so happened that I lived on East 94th Street between Park and Lexington on the 6th floor. And diagonally across from our apartment, a guy named a producer lived. And he used to throw cocktail parties all the time. And that's where I met Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch from the Oz stories.
Yeah, the Wizard of Oz movie. Absolutely, MGM.
And Henry Morgan, and God knows how many other people whose name I probably wouldn't even have recognized since I was like, 7 or 9 years old. But this was all, Max Gordon was the producer. And he also, he ran a club called the Blue Angel where Lenny Bruce played. And I mean, amazing connections. But anyway, Brandon DeWilde, I understudied him in a play called The Race of Hairy Men by Evan Hunter. And we became very close friends. We were fated to be friends from the beginning, but we became very close. And we came out. At one point, he was trying to change his career into a musical career, and he taught himself to play the guitar. He was hanging out with all kinds of incredible musicians back in New York at the time. And when we drove out together to California, because he wanted to get back into films, to do some more film work, and we connected up immediately with Peter Fonda. Okay, Brandon and Peter Fonda. So here I am hanging out with Peter Fonda and Brandon DeWilde. Peter was going through a trial for marijuana possession, if you can believe it. Okay,
what are the odds?
which he beat. Okay, and he introduced me to Dr. Jacques Honduras, and where I learned some higher consciousness stuff that I talk about in the book as well. But one evening, Brandon and Peter and I went down to join the protest against the curfew that they were trying to impose on young people on the Sunset Strip. Okay? Mm-hmm. And that turned into what is known as the Sunset Strip riot. Okay? And I was there. And not only was I there, but during one of the protests where we sat down, we shall not be moved, while the sheriffs are coming at us from one end and the LA police from the other. I sat on Peter Bergman's face. Peter Bergman turns out to be the guy who started the Firesign Theater, and who I'd gone to Yale with. It was an open issue of the LA Free Press, a picture of Peter Bergman, who I had lost total touch with. And it said KPFK newsman Peter Bergman interviews returning Vietnam War veterans. So at the end of the evening, Brandon got beat up. Peter got arrested. I was writing for a newspaper in New York called the East Village Other, and I had a crazy press card with an eye on it. I pulled that up, and I guess it scared the cops. It was like the evil eye or something, because they didn't touch me. All right. And the next day, I called Peter Bergman at KPFK, and he said, "Yeah, I'm the Wizard of Oz." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, what?" He said, "I have a show called Radio Free Oz. It's on from like midnight to 3 or something like that, or 10 to 1, I don't remember." And he said, "Why don't you come down and and play with us?" And I did, and I met these two other guys, David Osman and Phil Austin, who were producing the show and affiliated with the show, and we discovered we were all fire signs. I'm a Leo. There were 2 Sagittarians, and Austin's and Aries. And so we started improvising together on the radio. It was a late-night call-in counterculture talk show that Bergman had created, okay? And we would portray various characters in Peter's lexicon. I was Ernie the Wonder Healer. The Philippines, and I would pull chicken legs out of people's bellies, and cure them of cancer and stuff, and people would phone in and talk to us, and they would believe whoever we were. They would believe it. And once we all kind of realized that, we went, we're really onto something here. We can do these outrageous put-ons, or send-ups, as they call them in England. People will believe us. We'll create characters, and we'll have fun. And then Peter got a great idea to throw a major event to kind of test his celebrity, and he called it a love-in. And he invited his listeners to come to Elysian Park in Los Angeles on a Sunday afternoon and gather for music and incense and incest and whatever. And 6,000 people showed up. 6,000 people. And many of them brought their instruments, and they improvised music, and it was a beautiful be-in. It was a love-in and a be-in, and it started really. It was the first of many such gatherings that later happened during those wacky psychedelic years. Okay,
yeah, man.
So
yes,
he was a real innovator. And then when we got our first record deal, Gary Usher was our producer at Columbia, and he wanted to do a Radio Free Oz record because Peter was so famous right now. And Peter said, no. I think Phil Austin at dinner said, no, you have to do a Firesign Theater, actually an Oz Firesign Theater record. And Gary said, whatever you want. So that first record, Waiting for the Electrician or Someone Like Him, came out of the success of Radio Free Oz. And of course, we had to drop the name Oz Firesign Theater because Disney owned the rights to an animated feature called Return to Oz or something.
Yes, of course. I remember that as a kid, sure.
Right? It was either animated or it was live action. I can't remember. But they said you can't use the name Oz. And, of course, I could have said, well, we're from Australia, and it's the name of our country. You can't take the name of our country away from it. But instead we said, fine, Firesign Theater is confusing enough. Let's just drop the Oz. Nobody will know. And nobody did. So anyway, and that was the kickoff to our record success. But it didn't sell that many records. And so when the suits at Columbia were having one of their meetings to decide what they were going to do with their roster, their lineup of artists, they were all getting ready to drop the Firesign Theater. You know, who are these guys? And a guy named John McClure, who was the head of the spoken arts division of Columbia Records, held up our record and waved it in their faces and said, these guys are geniuses. This is a whole new approach to comedy. They've created long-form, overdubbed comedy. There's never been anything like it. You've got to keep them signed. And he said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'll sign them to a spoken arts contract, and we'll keep them on. Now, that was wonderful. Only one hitch. The spoken arts contract. Well, first of all, I'll give you the good news. The spoken arts contract gave us unlimited free studio time.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
That's
amazing.
The downside was we traded that for a reduced royalty fee. Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right. So, we were four hippies, really. Sure. I mean, hippie. Hell, I went to Yale. I was more hip than a hippie. But we all had agreed from the very beginning that we were going to share everything equally, and that when we did our writing and our performing, everybody would have a say as to what went into the final product. And that was true for us right up to the end of our time together when Peter Bergman passed away about 5 years ago. And then Phil Austin a few years after that. But here's the good news. David Osman and I are still alive.
Hell yeah.
Alive! I tell you, alive! They're alive! And we're going to be performing a new piece based on an old piece called The Art of Radio at the Here Now Festival on Saturday night to top off their evening of original audio presentations. The first time that we performed this was back in 1970 at a thing called the Arley Festival, which was a gathering in Arley, West Virginia, of people who worked in the listener-supported radio station, the Pacifica stations. And Phil Austin, who never liked to fly, his voice was added into the three-man piece that we did by satellite. Okay,
wow.
So he could actually be there for the radio broadcast and the live presentation. Well, when the Library of Congress inducted one of our most famous albums, Don't Crush That Dwarf, Hand Me the Pliers, into its historical recordings, or hysterical recordings, if you will, about 7 years ago now, we went down and met everybody. And then last year, they announced that they were purchasing our archives. Yeah. The Library of Congress purchased our archives for mid six figures.
Oh, that's great. Oh, my God. I figured it was kind of a government sort of, well, that's a nice honor. Thank you very much. There'll be no money, of course.
No, there was $500 million. Okay?
Wow, man.
All right? So that was a real gratifying thing that kind of acknowledged the cultural effect Firesign Theater had on the country, the world, and on comedy in general. So to celebrate that, David Osman and I resuscitated The Art of Radio, wrote it as a three-man piece, and performed it on the stage of the Coolidge Theater in the Library of Congress. Okay, and that piece now has great legs. Okay, and we performed it again on Mother's Day, or as I call it, Smothers Day, because it's a celebration of comedy, up on Whidbey Island at a little restaurant, a little wine cafe in Langley.
Wow!
And it was a big hit, and so we keep updating it. We have to keep up. We got to put Roseanne in there now, right?
Oh, it does reflect current events, obviously. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Firesign Theater, was always, but we did two things. We were timeless and we were timely.
Indeed.
So
Absolutely, man.
When you listen to the records, there are many, many references to things that were happening at the time, but there's also, we're futurists.
Yes, you are. Go on.
Right? And so a lot of what we wrote about was predictive. My favorite, of course, is in the album, I Think We're All Bozos on This Bus. I played a character called Clem, and I basically was a hacker who planted a virus in the mainframe computer, direct readout memory, Dr. Memory, and I brought down this future fair, which was a government-organized Disneyland, which was supposed to make everybody think that everything was great, okay? So I was the backstory was I was a fired worker, and I got access to the computer, and I planted a virus, which was a question like a Quan that the computer could not answer with a yes or a no, and it brought everything down. Now, but here's the topper, and I don't have my phone handy. Will you tap dance for a minute? I'm going to get my phone and demonstrate something amazing.
Absolutely, man. No, I know what you're going to do. That's great.
Okay, I'm back with my iPhone, which is my phone, and I'm going to say something to Siri. This is Worker speaking. Hello.
Hello, Clem. What function can I perform for you? LOL.
Now, for those who may not be acquainted with the record, that is the question. That's the way that I got into the mainframe computer, by saying, this is Worker speaking, hello. And then the computer would open up to me, and that's why I could plant the virus. So she is talking with a computer voice, and then she goes laugh out loud.
Yep, hello. Absolutely, man.
Why is that there? It's there because Steve Jobs was an early fan of the Firesign Theaters, okay?
Yep.
And later, when I did voices for A Bug's Life for Pixar, I went up to I think it was Emeryville for the cast and crew screening, and Steve Jobs had just bought shares of Pixar because, of course, he was helping them develop their incredible computer animation systems. And I met him, and he said, I'm a big fan. And I said, that's great. But then when we were going through our archives, we have an archivist who's been working with us for decades now named Taylor Jessen. And Taylor has been assembling and digitizing all of the material that we're going to send to the Library of Congress. It's just ready to be shipped, in fact, because we want to continue. Excuse me.
No problem.
We want to continue to make rare material available to our fan base at firesigntheater.com. So we digitized a lot of original tapes and movies and stuff, and then sent the originals. We're sending the originals to Washington. All right. So he found, going through pictures, he found a picture of Steve Jobs when he was probably in his late 20s, okay, at a Firesign Theater record signing up in Berkeley. Okay?
Yeah, that's amazing. Go on.
So we didn't realize that he, had been an early fan of Firesign Theater. And obviously when he heard Bozos on This Bus, which basically predicted the computer revolution, right? He was inspired by it. Wow. So we actually inspired Steve Jobs to carry on. And I'm telling you, it's an amazing story. It is an amazing story.
Well, again, as you say, you guys were futurists, and that. What was the video thing you guys did where it was? And forgive me, I forget which Firesign star did the video of the all-day cable access station, the cheap cable access station.
That's Proctor and Bergman's first album.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, called TV or Not TV. Okay. I was Fred Flam and he was Clark Cable. Okay. And yes, it was two guys who ran a cable studio out of their basement. Okay. And basically were doing outrageous things on television that you couldn't do on the networks. Yes, we were predicting all of that stuff. And then there was a subplot. There were these like children who were hacking into our broadcasts, right? The children who were to become the pirates of the future.
Indeed.
Okay. All right. So yes, that was very predictive as well. But we were predictive because we had things we wanted to say that we couldn't say on the radio or television, because they were inflammatory. We were against the war in Nam, and a lot of of our ideas were very daring, and unique. And so we had to create platforms for ourselves to be able to write about and perform the things that we wanted the nation to listen to, the smart people in the culture who got our comedy and who got our arcane references and everything. And then when we got famous enough, we could tour. And when we toured, we would not only mount the shows that people loved from the records, but we also were able to inject new material into the stuff that we did. So those shows had a live quality to them that was also taking advantage of a platform that was our own. People who wanted to come and see us, specifically. And so we were with an audience that loved us and an audience that we loved, and we could do outrageous things and develop new material. So many times the Firesign records were based on material that we performed at a club called the Ash Grove in Hollywood.
Okay.
And the Ash Grove has been for years the Improv. Was taken over by.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's the Improv. That's the location.
Crazy.
Where Firesign used to do stand up its material that we were going to do as a record, so that we could see how it played to the audiences.
Sure.
And so the audiences have always been, our fans and followers have always been an integral part of the creation of the material that we did, which a lot of people don't understand. Also because we were cranking out studio albums. Right. There weren't recordings of live performances. But later we did that. We did a recording of a live performance called The Eight Shoes, and the album is called Fighting Clowns, and the artwork was by the late, great Phil Hartman.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes, I was, again, at work. We were talking about Phil Hartman's graphic album design career for, I know, Electra Asylum, among maybe other labels.
He did that Poco album, The Beautiful Horse,
Yes.
And the Clowns, which is a very elaborate thing. And of course, we're reminded of his terrible passing, which was just about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I know. It was 20 years ago. It was 98.
20 years ago, and and in my book, I talk about Phil because we loved him and worked with him a lot. But I met Phil Hartman. I happened to be at Disneyland. Don't know why. And I ran into Phil Hartman, who was celebrating the fact, as he told me, that he'd just been cast in Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
And he's with a punk girlfriend of his who had like a blue mohawk. And she was wearing, I'll never forget it, she was wearing a Splatter Mickey T-shirt. And for those of you who don't know what that was, it was a goth T-shirt of Mickey Mouse blowing his brains out with a pistol.
Oh, now forgive the laughing, because certainly, that is a harbinger of what was to come. Yeah, I know. And was that his wife that was wearing the shirt?
No.
Okay, well, that's good.
A goth girlfriend.
Wow.
But good grief. I mean, my book is filled with those kinds of references and crazy things that have happened. Coincidence? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, no. Well, honestly, that kind of opens up a point I was wondering. And I don't want to interrupt you, Phil, so please, if you want to continue.
Don't interrupt me. That's all right. You can ask questions out.
No, but you're telling great stories, man. But honestly, I was curious. as you mentioned, knowing Phil and everything. So I'm assuming, you knew him through his Groundling years when, and for, that's for my listeners who may not know, the LA sketch comedy group, like Second City here in Chicago, right. So, and certainly Lisa Kudrow, John Lovitz, among others, including Phil, Lorraine Newman, of course, at Groundling. And in fact, I just had a couple months ago, another great voiceover guy, Tim Matheson, telling me he was part of the original Groundlings group and everything. And he even kind of was like, hey, no, those are the comedians. I was just an actor kind of working out when they were just getting started, but I wouldn't consider myself. And, he's a humble guy. But I was interested. So, as Firesign vets, I'm assuming certainly the people, including Phil Hendry, of course, because you guys work in the same kind of things. But I was wondering about, how many of your contemporaries or even people slightly before you, like Bob and Ray, Stan Freberg, other people that were doing that kind of off-the-wall comedy, how many of those people, contemporaries and your inspirations, did you get a chance to meet? And do you have any stories about those encounters?
Well, Stan Freberg, yes, because he was in the world of audio recording. And by the way, the last time I saw Phil was maybe a week before his death.
Wow.
He was doing, he's Canadian.
Yes.
So he was doing a series of Canadian beer commercials. Okay.
Okay.
I forget the name of the beer now, but anyway, famous Canadian beer. And I ran into him at a recording session in the Valley, where I was doing, some other product. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those things like, he'd been in New York all these years. We said, we got to get together. Let's call and make a date. The next thing I know, he's gone,
Wow.
So crazy. But we worked out at the Groundlings. And remember when we did Nick Danger, Third Eye, which was our big success, the one, the album was on How Can You Be in Two Places at Once When You're Not Anywhere at All? Okay.
It was the whole side. Am I correct? Of one of
Yeah. Again, for the children out there who don't know what sides are.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Right. The vinyl records of the 60s and 70s and 80s were basically two-sided plastic records, right? And you could turn it over and play the other side. Nick Danger, Third Eye. Nick Danger was going to be a radio serial. And we did a bunch of radio shows. You can hear 80 hours of our radio shows, John, if you go to the firesigntheater.com and you buy a book called The Duke of Madness Motors, okay, which is a profusely illustrated book of all of our stories about our radio years, and it includes an MP3 of 85 hours of our selected radio shows.
Wow.
And for better or for worse, you can actually go online to Firesign Theater Radio anytime, 24 hours a day, and hear our material. So if you're not acquainted with us, that might be a fun way, for
Absolutely,
you to turn on to it.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So where was it? Yeah. So we were doing radio shows on commercial stations at this point. And we had decided we were going to go in. I think we had a Sunday afternoon show. We were going to go in and we're going to do an adventure of Nick Danger, and then that was going to be a running serial on the show. Mm-hmm. We get to the station. Now this may sound familiar to you and other people who work in the radio. We get to the station and our keys couldn't open the door. They had changed the locks. They had sold the station. And instead of it being, rock and roll and comedy, it was now Hasidic cowboy western, Irish dance music, clogs. I mean, it was just gone. So we said, what are we going to do with this? We said, well, we have another side of the record. Let's put it on there. And that was one of our greatest hits. Now, the reason I mention it is that it also was inspiring to Phil Hartman, and he created a character called Chick Hazard.
Okay.
And the Groundlings would do on a regular basis their take on Nick Danger, Third Eye, on the detective noir radio series. Okay,
yeah.
And he absolutely confessed to the fact that it was inspired by Nick Danger, and imitation is the best form of flattery.
Absolutely. Are you aware of the Thrilling Adventure Hour guys?
Yes.
Have you met them?
I've met them, yes, but I haven't performed with them. I performed with Fake Radio,
Okay.
and some other live audio presentations.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I love that, and I support it as much as I can. But no, I think they're doing excellent work.
yeah, Ben Blacker has been on the show as well, and he dips into comic book writing as well as his audio comedy and everything. And no, the first time I heard Thrilling Adventure, I'm like, oh, they're doing Firesign Theater, they're doing Nick Danger and stuff. Because again, man, yeah, you get, hey, no, really, man, that's why, honestly, Phil, it is a thrill to talk to you, because it was so exciting to hear really well-produced audio comedy and in that great classic radio way, but being counterculture and crazy as you guys were of the times. I discovered you guys, in my high school and college years in the 80s. That's really when I found you and everything. And I also embarrassingly will confess, and I said this to you in the previous show, our college radio station. Well, not we didn't do it on the air. We did it as a school project for a teacher. Yeah. We took your Nick Danger Third Eye script, and we did our best performing it. And of course we can't, of course not hold a candle. It's like Neil Simon walking into a high school production of The Odd Couple or something like that. And I'm sure it's embarrassing and kind of that's thanks kids. I know you're trying, but
no, it's great. We encourage people to do that, and we've actually published our scripts. Broadway publishing, Broadway plays in New York.
Yes, go on.
And we encourage people to perform them either as an audio piece or on stage. I've seen several productions of Nick Danger done locally by theater groups.
Sure, of course.
I'm always really tickled to see how they interpret it, and how they cast it, and what clever ideas they come up with to entertain a live audience.
But it was that thrill, as you were even saying as a kid, of putting sound effects, putting everything together, and it's like, oh my God, you realize, much like comic book people, the pencil is the only thing, and their imagination, keeping them from making amazing special effects. And that's the beauty of radio. And even Stan Freberg, I know, used to, he had a bit on one of his comedy albums about how you can't, things you can do on radio you can't do on television. Yes. And he created the largest chocolate sundae with, rivers of chocolate syrup rolling off a mountain and stuff. And
dropped that huge cherry on it from a plane.
That's right. The Thunderbirds had a giant cherry to drop on the sundae. Exactly, man.
Okay, now I'm gonna say something to you here about that. One of my dear friends passed away fairly recently. Harry Anderson.
Sure. Yes. From Night Court, of course.
Harry, here's what Harry said about radio. It has to be believed to be seen.
Yep. Very good.
Isn't that brilliant? It has to be believed to be seen. And luckily, my wife, Melinda, and I spent some time with Harry and Elizabeth in September in their home in Asheville, a home where it was a new house that he'd moved to in Asheville. And I said, so Harry, do you still have your electric chair in the house? He said, I have two of them.
Of course he does.
Two. Who else would you know who would have two electric chairs in their home? And Harry was the best. And in the book, Where's My Fortune Cookie, available at Amazon.com. In the book, I talk about how when Proctor and Bergman, half the wits of the Firesign Theater, were touring, we needed an opening act when we were in Houston. And we noticed this guy at the bar who was doing magic. And we went over and we said, obviously you're a skilled magician. Could you open for us? And he said, sure. It was Harry. All right. And he did a dynamite act. Oh, yeah. He did his knees through the arm.
Yes.
And we said, man, we got to stay in touch. The next time we were in Texas, we were in Austin, and he was bartending there as well. We said, look, we've changed our act. It's more of a new age act now. Could you open for us again? And he did. He did an entire new act. So after that, we took him out to dinner, and we said, look, Harry, you've really got the stuff. Why don't you, come out to L.A., and maybe we can help you. The next thing.
Lost you, Phil. You there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, start again with the next thing.
Okay. How far did I get with the Harry Anderson?
You were in L.A. You told him you got to come to L.A.
Yeah. Okay. So we say, you got to come to L.A. And the next thing I know, I'm guest starring on Night Court, his television
Oh, my God.
series.
I got to find that episode, man. That's fantastic you were on Night Court.
Yeah, I did 3 of them.
Oh, you had a running character?
No, but I did a 2-parter of a mad scientist who's holding them hostage. And then I did another one where I was an underwear king, and I was selling underwear using one of their characters. Anyway, it's complicated.
No, I understand. That's Night Court and Barney Miller were great like that. They'd get these amazing character actors to come in and play different roles. And certainly now through syndication, you do realize, that's the same guy that was the judge in the other episode. But that's fine because that's right. I mean, and I know that Reinhold Wedgie, the creator of Night Court, was a writer on Barney Miller. But that's the thing, man. That was the genius of those shows. That mundane setting of either a courtroom or a squad room, and these crazy people walking in. And having these great performances. So that's fantastic. I got to find these episodes, man.
Yeah, and also Dave's World. When he did Dave's World, I did an episode where I was a talk show host. I did a lot of talk show hosts on a lot of television shows. And I did a lot of the Golden Girls, with dear Betty White. I toured with Betty White when I was a younger actor. In New York, in A Bell, Book, and Candle.
Wow! Oh my God, was she in the Kim Novak role?
Yeah.
Holy cow! Is that man? All right, you got to. I'm sure half my listeners have seen Bell, Book, and Candle. You played the Jack Lemmon role.
I played the Jack Lemmon role, whom I was grateful to be often compared to in my acting style, because I was inspired by his acting style, I have to tell you. And she was working with her husband, Alan Ludden, at the time.
Was Alan the Jimmy Stewart role?
Yes.
Wow, that's fantastic. Alan Ludden, the host of Password, if you're a game show aficionado, and I know they're rerunning Password on Buzzer, the old, the kind of Nick at Night of game shows channel right now.
Yeah, that's where Betty and Alan fell in love and got married.
Wow.
And he tragically died of cancer, really at an early age.
Yeah.
And she went on. But there's a story I tell about that in the book. Where's my fortune cookie? We had. There's a cat that plays a major role named Pyewacket.
Yep.
A Siamese cat, okay, which is her familiar. The witch's familiar. And in the stage play, we were rehearsing it at Variety Arts in New York, rehearsal studios in Broadway, and this one day, the cat was going to be introduced to the cast. The cat that was going to tour with us on this show. So this woman comes in with this cat and opens the cage, and the cat comes out, and it's a Siamese cat. Now, Siamese cats usually are cross-eyed for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Well, this cat had been inbred from the original Pyewacket on Broadway.
Wow.
And its eyes were straight. But the woman who was the cat caretaker was cross-eyed. And Betty White, she saw this, and she said, "Excuse me." And she walked out of the room, walked down the stairs. We could hear her heels going, clump, 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 clump. And then from the bottom of the stairs, we heard, so she laughed herself out. And then she came back again. And that woman toured with us and would be standing off stage when Pyewacket was doing its thing, cross-eyed. Sure. I mean, oh, my God. Anyways, what, give up show business?
That's awesome. Seriously, Phil, I love the book is incredible. It has these kinds of stories. And again, we're getting a sneak of what I expect to hear on the podcast as well.
Yes.
I mean, that's great, man. And again, you're a natural storyteller. This is the perfect format for you. And I'm so glad you're doing that. I'm also glad that you've revived this sketch and are touring with David with it and everything. Yeah, man, you got to come to Chicago, man. Come on.
Yes, the fact is that this piece seems to be a successful piece for us, and we are investigating through a producer the possibility of doing a little touring with it.
That'd be great, man.
Okay, because what the show would consist of is like a 40-minute piece that David and I do with sound effects and voices and crazy characters and fireside stuff, and then a Q&A afterwards. so people can ask us questions about our careers, and and we can get to know them a little bit.
Absolutely, man. No, that would be perfect. Hey, I got to ask you, as someone who does so many dialects and stuff, as a disciple following you guys, I did my bit, certainly when I was in sports radio, and would imitate players and managers and come up with little song parodies and things. But in today's more sensitive time, and I mean, again, you've got the cred. It's like Rickles with put down humor. He already had the cred, and people gave him a pass, right till the end and stuff. But it disappoints me because, and truly, I get where, for example, Hank Azaria right now is having, certainly, you're aware of the Simpsons controversy about Apu.
Yes, of course I'm aware of it.
There you go. Exactly, man. Well, and that's the thing. Where is the line? Because, again, we grew up with dialect comedians, and it wasn't with hate. It was just funny stuff. And also, every accent. I am sure the American accent is hilarious to a territory in Africa or the Amazon jungle. They are laughing at the American accent. And it's not with, it's not with malice. I mean, you and I get it. It sounds musical. It sounds different, and that's okay.
Sure.
So
my name is Jose Jimenez.
Right. Oh my God, Bill Dana, Jewish man, playing Jose Jimenez, playing the Frito Bandito, and I mean, he was getting crap in the '60s and '70s. And again, it was, hey man, it's just a character. It's not meant to be demeaning. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Being from older generations,
it celebrates diversity.
Yes, it truly is, man. Yeah,
John, diversity is a sore subject under the present administration.
Well, that's true too.
With the alt-right and the right wing basically in sway in our country right now, the idea of diversity is scary to these people.
Yes.
Okay, because as somebody who talks differently is taking their job, or their job away from them.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of yobs to think that, because it's not true. So that's the politically correct thing has been a kind of transmogrified in a way. But the fact of the matter is, as you say, it's a way of expressing characters. I mean, Meryl Streep does it in the movies and nobody gets upset.
Of course she
right?
does. Absolutely.
But I'm going to tell you a story about it, the American accent. I was in Paris after the Yale Russian chorus sang and drank its way, as we say in Russian, we pili и pili через Советский Союз. We sang and drank across the Soviet Union. And after it was over, we went to the Communist Youth Festival in Vienna, where it was even worse politics. And finally, I said, I've had enough of this. And where some of the chorus, there are like 40 of us, went off to Yugoslavia, which existed at that time, various other places. I was sick of it. I went to Paris. And just to blow off some steam and get laid, So, right, and eat French bread and drink wine. So I ended up at La Maison des Élèves de l'École Centrale des Arts et des Manufactures, which was a dormitory for the students of the Arts and Manufacturing School, in the 13th arrondissement. And one of the wonderful things about this place, and I write about this in the book too, by the way, was that all of the rooms were built around a big atrium, like 13, 14-story atrium. And in the morning, they would cook, they'd bake bread and make coffee, and that those aromas would waft all the way up, and that's how you'd wake up in the morning. So I go down for coffee and the croissant or coffee and the beignet, and there was this one French guy that I befriended who was sleeping with an American girl. And she would say, "Oh, je suis très heureuse d'être ici à Paris pour la première fois." And I said to Jean-Pierre, Jean-Pierre, she has a terrible, terrible French accent, American accent. How do you tolerate it? He says, "Philippe, when you hear a French girl talk to you, and she talks, like I do, and she says, 'Philippe, you look good today,' does that not sound sexy to you and charming?" I said, "Yes, it does." He says, "That is the way she sounds to me."
That's great.
Isn't that an interesting insight?
Of course.
Isn't I would never have thought of that.
That's fantastic. Well, but Phil, and you're right. The alt-right is absolutely uptight about any non-white people.
Hey, it rhymes.
But
it rhymes. Alt-right is uptight.
Alt-right,
the alt-right
I think we've created a new T-shirt. We got to go to the custom T-shirt place and make some right now. But what concerns me is, because obviously you're a liberal, I consider myself a liberal. That it's coming. This kind of objection to dialect is coming from the left, and it is from the individual nationalities that are, obviously that's the Hank Azaria problem of, Middle Eastern people saying, hey man, that's not cool. And it's, I really see both sides, and I'm conflicted because, again, we grew up with this, and again, it was never done with hate. That show that J. Carroll Nash did in the 40s, Life with Luigi.
Life with Luigi, right. That's good.
Sitcom, all about immigrants coming to America, all dialect comedians, Hans Conried playing a German guy, somebody playing a Swedish guy, J. Carroll Nash doing an Italian accent. And yeah, it's pretty heavy, and it is, hey, Mamma Mia. And
there were a lot of Yiddish accents, too.
Absolutely.
On radio.
Absolutely.
Mr. Pizzo.
Yes, from Jack Benny, you're right. But that's the thing, man. I mean, and
Fanny Bryce, But it was embracing the diversity, the difference, the uniqueness of the people who were bringing new colors and ideas, right, and culture to America. All right, and I still think that that's the way it should be celebrated, frankly.
Yeah. And
I think that the overreaction on both sides is ridiculous.
I kind of agree, man. And again, I really I struggle with this because I understand, and certainly Middle Eastern people should absolutely play Middle Eastern characters. But also, it's like, animation. You got to be fast and you got to be funny. And I'm not saying that there aren't great Middle Eastern comedians that could do it as well. But it's like, Hank Azaria. I mean, can you imagine Mel Blanc going through that or something like that? Or like we said, we mentioned Bill Dana with Jose Jimenez and stuff. I mean, it's a weird time. And again, I get it, and maybe if we're slipping into another Victorian age, I'm shrugging right now. What else can you do? You don't want to offend. It's very weird, man. It's very weird.
It's a difficult time. It's a time of transition, and basically we're in retrograde right now.
Yeah. Yes. Good call. Yes.
We seem to have been progressing for a while, but it's like too much too soon. I think even President Obama talked about that recently, saying maybe he should have waited 20 years before he became president. You know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of apologetically. Yeah, no, I get it. And again, like you said, it's retrograde. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're in retrograde. And it's a scary time for people like me. My dad was active in the Democratic Party in New York, and in fact, this is in the book too. He was going to be put forward as a vice presidential nominee when one of his Democratic cohorts, a fellow named Paul V. McNutt, who had been the governor of the Philippines, was going to run for president.
Wow.
Okay, so I mean, I was raised in a very political atmosphere.
Sure.
I wouldn't say radical far left. No, not at all. Democratic Party left.
New Deal Democrat, I'm guessing, that kind of thing.
New Deal Democrats, right? And so I was always around very level-headed politicians in my youth.
I know what you mean. I get it.
Yeah, and yet it is the flamboyant, crazy ones. No, I don't think I have to name any names, who have risen to power. Right.
Right. Well, the best and the brightest are like, I don't want politics. I don't want them digging up this story about my grandfather or, my poor brother that has special needs and is going to look unfavorable to, a body politique, for whatever reasons. No, and it's sad. You're right. I mean, it's the batshit people. They're the ones that are running for office. They're the only ones.
But you raise a good point when you say that people of a certain ethnicity, if they're going to be doing a role like that, should be considered. I mean, this is obvious. Yes. In the movies, it's even more important.
Yes, and absolutely.
And it's become a point of contention because as the landscape of the culture has changed and is much more colorful and deeper in so many ways, we have to come to grips with the fact and embrace the fact that there are cultures that can now reveal themselves to us in honest ways because the people who represent them come from those cultures.
Absolutely.
You see? Yep. And that is something which we all need to embrace and learn from. Okay, but again, there's resistance to that from the right.
Right. No, you're right. No, you're right, man. Geez, I mean, I know you've done your share of voiceovers for DC and Marvel characters, superhero characters,
Yes,
and I'm sure you're aware that my friend Brian Bendis created Miles Morales, the half black, half Hispanic Spider-Man. That's a new Spider-Man that was created in the early 2000s, and he's really caught on. And when the last couple Spider-Man movies failed before the most recent one, people are like, why don't you give Miles Morales a chance? Well, certainly from certain white parties. They're like, Spider-Man's white, end of story. And it's like, no, man, this is a great character, and he is different from Peter Parker. He has a different backstory. And in fact, of course, through the magic of comics, they met each other, and through the magic of animation, they met each other and stuff. And as a real, honestly, am I keeping you too long, Phil? I'll wrap up if we need to.
No, let's do another, 5 minutes or so?
That'd be
Is that
great.
okay?
That'd be great. I meant to ask you on the first time, and it's great to have this opportunity now. When you did, because you've done a lot of superhero work for games and for animation as well.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, and like you were Simon Stagg for one of the Batman Arkham.
Batman things, right?
Yeah.
And it was the villain, Dr. Vidic, for 4 of the Assassin's Creed records.
Excellent.
Assassin's Creed games.
Yes. So now Assassin's Creed is its own thing, and the mythology comes from the games. When you've worked in the Marvel and DC universes, do you do any sort of background research? Did you look at Simon Stagg Beyond the Lines and say,
Oh, absolutely.
Were you a comic book reader back in the day?
Oh, was I ever?
Which comics did you read?
I read everything. I mean, Plastic Man.
Fantastic,
okay?
Excellent.
I read everything. In Goshen, I used to hop on my bike, ride down to the drugstore.
Damn straight.
And they had the comic racks.
Yep, spinner racks, absolutely, man.
And I'd buy everything I could, and then spend my summer out in the porch, reading them and enjoying the adventures. But back in New York, I became a rabid fan of the EC comics.
Yes, indeed, Tales from the Crypt, all the great horror and crime comics.
Yeah, I had a subscription to them, and so I would receive, like first editions at my doorstep in my apartment building. And of course, I was a big fan of Mad and Panic. Yes. And all of the other, spin-offs. I wrote letters to the editors that are in some of the collected works.
That's fantastic. That is amazing. William Gaines and Harvey Kurtzman and
yeah. And of course, the tragedy, which I share with many of you out there, was that I had all these comics in a hamper in my bathroom, and when I went off to I think Riverdale Country School, the high school where I was at boarding school, my mother threw them all away.
Yes.
She threw them all away.
Yeah.
All of my first edition. Now, it's not to say that I would have been smart enough, to say when I finally moved to California, hey, Mom, pack up all my comic books and send them to, I probably wouldn't have. But still, it breaks my heart that I didn't have the chance to do something with them.
Sure, save them or in some way. Man, you
save them or sell them.
Well, exactly. To eventually sell them. No, I understand. Baron Mordo, you were Doctor Strange's one of his villains and stuff in a Marvel game.
Yes, I'm the evil computer in. Oh gosh, what is that game called? Anyway, if you go on to the MPTV, LSGBT, whatever it's called, the movies and television website,
IMDb.
Yeah, that thing. And you Google me, you'll see that I've done thousands of things.
Yeah, man. I'm looking. I'm on your page right now, and I'm scrolling. So no, I know exactly what you mean.
And I have over the years I've kept lists of these things, but at a certain point it's just like I just throw my hands up, because it's such a great body of work. I've been in the business for 66 years.
Yeah.
I started when I was 9 years old doing live television in New York, right? So and I'm still doing stuff.
Yeah, you are.
So it's just. It's wonderful. It's great fun. And I do consider myself semi-retired because I'm certainly not beating the bushes for jobs or work these days. I appreciate greatly my time off my time with my darling, talented wife, Melinda Peterson, time that I can spend. We're both members of the Antaeus Classical Theater Company, which has a brand new spanking beautiful theater in Glendale. We still like to do work on the stage.
Cool.
And she's developing a wonderful play now called Hinton. What's it called? Anyway, it's a wonderful new play that was written in 1910.
Wow.
About the mill workers in Lancashire, and it was performed in 1912 on the West End in London. And because of the nature of the relationship between men and women expressed in that play, Oxford forbade its students from going to see it.
Wow.
Because this play in 1910 really is a story of female sexual liberation and social, sexual, financial liberation. Okay,
Yeah.
That's what the comedy of the play comes from, and it was before they even had the vote in England.
Wow.
Okay, so it is as timely now in so many ways as it was in 1910.
That's fantastic.
Again.
That's ironic times. Exactly. Again, in retrograde, here we are.
In retrograde, here we are. And it just, again, it emphasizes how slowly we change. What great resistance there always is to the most important aspect of life, which is embracing change. That's what keeps you sane, keeps you going. If you push against it, you're going to go crazy. Because, it's not going to stop. Change is inevitable. Evolution is inevitable, and that's just the way it is. So carry on.
Well, you carry on, man. And seriously, I am so appreciative of the fact that you are out there. Again, I said this to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I'm saying it to you. You guys have that unique perspective of going through the 60s culture wars and bringing that perspective to today in your works, and also just, when you are off the cuff and want to give your opinions. And that's great that you're out there, man, because I really think we need that kind of perspective and understanding that they say it on Battlestar Galactica, what has happened before will happen again. And right. Here we are. And but telling your great stories. Where's My Fortune Cookie, right? That's the book? That's
the book. Yeah, planetproctor.com if you want to connect up with me. If you want to get Planet Proctor, which I mail out. It's graphically beautiful. Collaborate with a guy named Chris Gross, and it's a beautiful piece of work. You've got to take a look at a sample of it at planetproctor.com. And if you want to join our mailing list, it's free, and you can contribute to it as well. So,
will the podcast also be called Where's My Fortune Cookie?
No. It's called Planet Proctor.
Planet Proctor, there we go. Okay.
Planet Proctor, Where's My Fortune Cookie?
Okay, excellent. And is it and it's okay, I can find out from Jeff if you don't know the particulars. Is it on like Stitcher or some other paid podcast network?
All of that I'm leaving up to Suziza.
Okay.
And yes, and Jeff Abraham will know the details about it. But you can get in touch with me. You've got my email.
Of course.
And I'll share with you whatever I learn. I've been working on other projects. And so now I'm turning my attention to the Here Now Festival in Kansas City, Missouri, and the prospect of the launch of the podcast. So I'll be learning more information about it all. But you can also go to the Here Now Festival website and read about it and see pictures of me and all that good stuff.
Cool. So is that on the 9th? Is that on June 9th? That week from Saturday?
June. It's the 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Oh, okay. So late next week. Okay.
It's a 4-day festival in early June. All things audio, workshops and writing workshops and hands-on or tongue-on opportunities to learn the techniques of narration and radio acting and being radioactive.
We have a similar festival with our Chicago Public Radio called the Third Coast Festival.
Oh, good.
They do great stuff as well. So no, that's great. Here and Now. We'll go to that website as well, and Planet Proctor as well, and then the Firesign Theater website, of course.
Theater website. Yeah, it's Here Now, HEAR.
Oh, okay.
Here now.
Got it.
How clever. All right. So look, keep filling those balloons with words.
And, my pleasure, man. Keep doing what you do, and as always, truly. Whatever the next project is, you're always welcome back because you've got a million stories, Phil Proctor, and I'm infinitely fascinated, so keep it up.
I love talking to you, and I love all of your own insights and experiences as well. Always fun to share with you.
Phil Proctor. Check out Where's My Fortune Cookie? That's Phil's autobiography. It's available at Amazon and many fine bookstores. Pick it up. It's a great collection of stories. Also, FiresignTheater.com is the place to go to hear Phil's and his group's groundbreaking comedy. So many great things and a lot of great merchandise as well. Scripts and other wonderful books and collections of Firesign Theater material. And then, of course, the Proctor Podcast, theproctorpodcast.podbean.com. And the first episode is already up, but more great comedy waiting for you from Phil Proctor. Thanks for listening to today's Word Balloon. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your support via Patreon. It helps us out here at Word Balloon. You don't have to subscribe to Word Balloon, but if you enjoy the content that I provide each week, I hope you'll help support the show and consider going to patreon.com/wordballoon. But thank you very much for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. More great Word Balloon for you this month. Great stuff. We've got a new episode also dropping today featuring Will Dennis, J.H. Williams, and Wendy Wright Williams, the people behind Where We Live, the incredible new anthology that supports the families and victims of the shootings in Las Vegas last year. An incredible project that was put together quickly. A lot of great creative people made this a very amazing anthology that I absolutely recommend. And we get behind-the-scenes stories on that. And also, Will Dennis really goes into some more great memories of being a wonderful editor at Vertigo. And we talk a lot about other great comic creators. So I hope you'll listen to that episode as well. Will Dennis, J.H. Williams, and Wendy Wright Williams on another episode of Word Balloon that drops today. Don't forget, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach me at john@wordballoon.com. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2018.